Okay, welcome back. This video is going to be about how I prep all of the servos at one time to be ready to be tested and then installed. So I got all 7 servos sitting here, and first one I'm going to do is the elevator here. Pull out the elevator servo box, open it up, and what you'll see inside is a nice little bag of goodies and the servo. So the servo box I don't save unless they're the nice real plastic kind that you get with the more expensive ones. And so now because this is the elevator, I'm pretty sure I know what servo arm I'm going to use. So I'm going to dump out, get this angled down a little bit so you can see it better. Here we go. So I'm pretty sure I know what servo arm I'm going to use. There's I've only seen these in the high-tech servos anyways. There's a servo arm that has a slot in it, and then this goes with it, and that allows it to have an adjustable distance from the center of the servo. And I like that for most single arm servos. So I'm going to put the rest of these back. I need to get my screwdriver and I'll be right back. Okay, I've got my screwdriver. I'm just going to go ahead and remove this round servo arm. I don't think I've ever used the round servo arm on anything, but it always comes on as the default one. Don't know why. Okay, so the round servo arm can go with the other servo arms here in the plastic bag, and I'll save those for a few years before I throw them out. I got dozens and dozens of these. Don't know if I'll ever use them all. Okay, so I'm not going to put the new servo arm on yet because this hasn't been centered. We'll do that later. So I'm going to put the servo arm and the little piece that goes with it in the plastic bag. But I don't like to put the screw in there. The screw I'm just going to start on top of the servo. Remember, this is the servo that has the black carbonite gear on it, and it has ball bearings on it. So I'm just going to leave that servo arm screw sitting there, and that one's done. So I'm going to next put on the grommets. There's a front and back to the grommet. The front side of the grommet has, let's see if you can see that. Yeah, there's a little indent there, and on the other side, if you turn it around, it's flat. Okay, so the flat side goes out, and you just push that grommet in, so it's flat on the outside here, and then you put a little brass kind of piece of tubing in, and you do that times the 4 holes that are there. So I'm going to finish that and be right back. Okay, so I've got all the grommets on. I'm going to put the 4 screws that use to tighten the servo down to the servo tray. I'm going to put all of those in one bag because they're all going to get screwed in at various times, and I'd rather just have them all in one bag. So that's going to be sitting separately. And the next thing to do is I want to label this. So I'm going to take a piece of white painter's tape here. Okay, I'm going to put that white painter's tape around where the servo the servo connection is. Okay. And I'll cut that off a little. Make it look nice and even. Throw that away. Have a sip of tea while I'm at it. And I'm going to take a fine Sharpie marker and mark this elevator. You'll appreciate that when you go to plug and unplug this from time to time. So I just have it says ELEV for elevator, and that servo is now done. Just going to go back in the elevator bag, along with a bag of things to go with it. So now I've got the elevator ready to go. I'm going to do that times all the others here in a minute, and once I finish that, I'll show you a couple other things I do to prep the servos. Okay, little point to remember. Remember, the brass tubing goes up from the bottom. You want the little flange that's on that brass tubing to be pressed up against the plywood when you screw it down. You don't want the sharp end because it'll just dig into the plywood. Okay, so when you get to the rudder, okay, you don't use the single, you need a double arm. So I've got the double arm here, and I'm going to put the double arm in the little bag that goes with the rudder, so that when you get the nozzle steering, and because you need the two arms, one for the nozzle steering and one for the rudder, so you make sure you put the double arm in with the rudder. Thank you. And the other thing about the rudder you need to make sure is that you got two clevises, two quick connects in your little bag of goodies for the rudder, because it has to have two of them. Thank you. One more tip I like to add at this point is don't work on a hard surface when you're working with all these spare parts. Have a towel down. Hard surface, you drop all these little brass things and screws and all, and they just bounce all over the place, bounce the floor, and you never find them. So work with a nice towel down when you're doing this. Okay, when it comes to labeling both the flaps and the ailerons, I use a blue tape that says right flap, and a white painter's tape that says left flap. Okay, so you got a right flap and a left flap, and I like to label those differently. In the case of the flaps, the arm's going to be in a different direction, and I guess the arm's in a different direction too on the ailerons, but I'll check that. But and so I'm going to label the Y connectors left and right, even though on a Y connector it doesn't make any difference. You get used to putting blue to blue and white to white, and so when it does make a difference, it's okay. So be sure to label them differently, left and right. Okay, the ailerons are almost ready. I've labeled the extensions, not the servo itself, but the servo extensions, left aileron and right aileron, because the servo wire itself is going to be down inside the wing. So those are labeled. Be sure to label the right end. That's this end, and not the end you plug into. Okay, because the end you plug into is going to plug into the servo. Before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and use these nice wide shrink wrap tubing. I'm going to put the servo wire through the tubing. I'm going to connect the black wire to the extension, and let's see here. Okay. I also check and make sure that extension is all the way down, so you don't see any metal sticking out on this side. So it means it's all the way down. And I'm going to double check black wire to black wire, because once you put this on, you're not going to be able to tell. Actually, I guess you can, but that's okay. So now you just center up the shrink wrap tubing, pull out your heat gun, and I feel it on my wrist here while it gets hot. Okay. I don't get too close, but I do want it to shrink. Wait a minute, make sure it's centered. Okay. Alright, so the shrink wrap is centered, and we just shrink it down. Make sure you shrink both sides. So shrink wrap tubing only shrinks so much. So it shrunk down on the center part here, but this won't shrink all the way down on the wires. That's okay, because once it's shrunk down on the inside right here, where the two connectors are, it's going to hold real well. Okay, I'll do the other one off camera, and I think this completes all of the preparation for all the servos. Thank you very much. Enjoy the next one.